health and well-being.
Morning everyone, I'm Councillor Sarah King and I'm the Cabinet Member for Council Homes.
Morning everyone, I'm Councillor Stephanie Crine, I'm Cabinet Member for Communities, Democracy and Finance.
Good morning everyone, I'm Deputy Leader and the Cabinet Member for Children, Education and Refugees.
Good morning everyone, I'm Councillor Martin Seaton, Cabinet Member for Jobs, Business and Skills.
Good morning all, my name's Councillor James McAsh and I'm the Cabinet Member for the Climate Emergency, Clean Air and Streets.
Morning, I'm Councillor Helen Dennis, I'm Cabinet Member for New Homes and Sustainable Developments.
Good morning everyone, I'm Councillor Catherine Rose, I'm the Cabinet Member for Neighbourhoods, Leisure and Parks.
And I shall also ask the council officers that are here to support and advise us this morning. I'll start with Doreen.
Morning, I'm Doreen Forrester-Brown, Assistant Chief Executive for Governance and Assurance, and I'm also the Council's Monitoring Officer.
Good morning, I'm Alfie Lodrick, the Council's Chief Executive.
Good morning, Paula Thornton, Constitutional Team.
And I'll let Natasha come and sit down and introduce herself in a second. While she does so, let me just say if anyone else is coming up to speak during the course of the meeting, please do wait until I invite you forward, and please do introduce yourself when you sit down to speak. And a reminder for everyone that this is a public meeting. We are being live streamed as well as those of you who are in the room. Please do turn your phones to silent so you don't disturb the meeting. If you need to take a call, please do leave the room. Should anyone want to film today, you are of course very welcome to for all of our council meetings in public, but please do be courteous of other members of the audience who may themselves not want to be on film. Natasha, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good morning everybody, my name is Natasha Ennin and I'm the Cabinet Member for Community Safety.
So we have a full Cabinet here today, so we don't have any apologies. We don't have any urgent items today, and nor do we intend to take any items in closed session. Does any member of Cabinet have a disclosure of interest or a dispensation today? No? Okay. Are we happy to agree the minutes of the previous meeting on the 6th of February?
Agreed.
Agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. That takes us to public questions. We had two public questions. Is Ralph Smeeve or Jess Hinnings here today?
They indicated they might not be able to attend due to work commitments.
Excellent. Well, there were two questions there. Both answers to both questions have been published and will be available on the website. Yes, I'll send them to and have been sent to the individuals who asked them as well. But should anyone want to look at those questions, you're of course very welcome to do so. We don't have any deputation requests today. So the first report we have is on Marie Curie and the progress of rehousing residents. And I want to welcome Councillor Sarah King. This is your first Cabinet meeting. Delighted to have you in Cabinet and to be the first item on your first meeting.
And I still don't know how to use the microphone after all these years. Thank you very much for your kind words. It's much appreciated. I am conscious that the report here today is an update to Cabinet. It's a piece of work which is obviously absolute paramount in terms of keeping our residents safe and being able to rehouse them in a way that is really, really sensitive to the situation that they're in and to do so in a way that they feel comfortable with. I wanted to start by saying thank you to officers, particularly Southwark, for bringing me up to speed on this so quickly in my new role, but also to ward councillors, and I'm conscious they're not here, but the Tenants and Residents Association, given the levels of support that they've been providing throughout this process. Thank you, Ian. I'm going to hand over to Southwark to run through the detail of it. But yeah, I think from my perspective, the key thing for me is the learnings from this report, being able to go forward in a way that is right for residents and ensures that everyone remains safe and is comfortable with the process. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for receiving the report. So Cabinet have received 3 previous reports on Marie Curie rehousing in each year since 2021. I want to thank residents of the TRA who supported the council and supported residents and acted as a critical friend to the council over the last 9 months since I've been involved. I'll take the report as read, but I'll just draw Cabinet's attention to a number of paragraphs in the report. Paragraph 15 on page 3 sets out a very short table of the number of remaining residents who are left. So there's 7 secure council tenants who are left, and there's 4 non-resident leaseholders. I'm pleased to say that we actually completed a buyback on Monday of this week, which took it down from 5 to 4, basically, so that's good news. Also, in terms of paragraph 31 on page 6, it just draws out lessons learned for rehousing tenants, and there's 5 or 6 points there which I just wanted to draw attention to around a one council approach and supporting residents through the process. Paragraph 49 on paragraph 4, on page 9, it just sets out what the cost is for the Waking Watch, and it is considerable. It's approximately 400k per year to maintain the Waking Watch for the building currently. And then finally, paragraph 53 on page 10, it sets out some legal advice which makes it possible for the council to go to pre-advert direct offers to support tenants, residents to move a lot quicker. It also avoids frustration of tenants bidding for properties and coming 10th or 11th and not getting moving forward. I'm happy to take any questions which anybody might have.
Before you do that, Councillor Wingfield, I know you're here as one of the ward councillors. Would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to address the Cabinet this morning. Can I say that I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my 2 colleagues in St Giles Ward. And can I say from the outset that we fully support all the recommendations and proposals contained in the report. It's 3 years now since the fire safety hazard was detected at Marie Curie, and personally, if I was living in such a block, I would want to be moved as quickly as possible, as I'm sure you can appreciate. You know, if there was a fire in this building, heaven forfend, but if somebody was either killed or injured in the process, then I'm sure the council would get the blame straight away for not moving people a lot quicker. And there is a cost, as the report quite clearly indicates. It's running at £1.5 million at the moment, and it's rising as we speak every day. So at a time when there are tremendous pressures on the housing revenue account and a moratorium has been placed on expenditure, including new build on this estate, as Councillor Dennis knows too well, this continued cost for really 10% occupancy of the building really cannot be justified. And it certainly cannot be justified in the eyes of the other residents who live on the estate, who've witnessed already 2 single-storey blocks demolished on their estate, and the estate divided into 2, with one half practically becoming a wasteland, continued risk of antisocial behaviour. That's the first point. The second point I'd like to make is that there must be continued effort and increased impetus given to the prioritising of the remaining tenants and buyback from the remaining leaseholders. On page 6 of the report, in paragraph 31, you will see there's clear lessons to be drawn from this exercise, and they're clearly spelt out. I cannot stress the importance of having a joined-up one council approach, as the report calls it, being absolutely necessary to achieve the aims of this report. And I must say it echoes the discussions we had on Monday evening at OSC, where Councillor Cryan and Councillor King were both present. What is outlined here is that the lessons to be learned should have really been here in the first place. And I'm hoping that the new Director of Housing, as part of the transformation of that department, will take up the challenge and review all the protocols and procedures involved to eliminate and reduce many of the bureaucratic barriers that prevent smooth working in a service which is vital to the majority of residents in our borough. My final point is to thank the officers involved in the work on Marie Curie and in compiling this report. Their collaborative approach in engaging with residents, leaseholders, the TNRA and ward councillors is really appreciated and has been an exemplar which I think other council services could benefit from. In particular, I would personally like to thank Sarfraz next to me, and I don't say this too often, as some of you may know, but in all my years on the council, he's one of the most dedicated, professional and hard-working officers I've ever had the pleasure to work with. I'm also aware that his contract is coming up shortly, and I think it would be a lost opportunity for the council if we lost his expertise and he couldn't be engaged in some way. But anyway, I'll leave it at that, and I'm sure that this report, as I say, will act to inform the process of transformation that is underway. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Winfield. You might stay for a moment in case there are any questions to you, as well as questions to Sarah and Sarfraz. Questions people like. Steph, you had a...
Thank you. And actually, some of the stuff actually Councillor Winfield has mentioned, but a couple of things. So normally when reports on Marie Curie come, we do have a delegation from the Tenants and Residents Association, from residents who have really been great, and they hold us our feet to the fire on this, but they're also quite critical friends around this as well. I know they're not here today, and it would be good to know the reason why, because whilst we're saying they are supportive of this, are they fully supportive? Are there any concerns they have around this process and the recommendations here as well? Because we're not hearing from them today, and I think it's always really valuable to hear from tenants and residents where possible around that. I absolutely understand, it may have not been possible for people to have come. I just want reassurances also they were invited along today. And the other thing I wanted to say is obviously the recommendation number 4 around actually coming back to Cabinet in July to report on the progress of rehousing for all the remaining residents and ultimately confirming a date when the building will be decommissioned. That has to be a given. It really does. It can't slip. And we really need that date to be decommission. Can't be, we'll decommission it in 12 months' time or 18 months' time. It has to be in 2024. I just, I share some of the concerns and frustrations that Councillor Winfield said. When this was first done, none of us thought that in 3 years' time there would still be residents in there. And have we paid too much sway to the fact that we were going to offer people Crinscott Street in Bermondsey when actually people didn't want Crinscott Street in Bermondsey, and that was like the panacea of moving out. So I think in that respect, I do think when it comes back in July, ideally the residents need to be here, and we have to have a real firm timetable and a date this year that the building is decommissioned.
Thank you for the question. Yes, the residents were invited, and we did send them the details to make a deputation 2 weeks before today's meeting, and I did check in with them earlier in the week, and they just felt the timing wasn't right for them right now, but they would like to make a deputation in the future. I have also kept them informed of what I'm saying in terms of the report, and I've also explained what the recommendations were, and they did support those recommendations as well. I attend the monthly TRA meetings, and they've been really supportive, and we've shared lots of information with them over the last 9 months, and they've been, both challenging but also supportive to work which we've done. You're correct in saying Crinscott Street. We had purchased Crinscott Street, which were 13 new homes specifically for Marie Curie residents, and we had strong engagement for residents to undertake viewings for those properties, and I felt at least 50% of the remaining residents we had may go into Crinscott Street. However, it turned out once they'd done the viewings and once they were aware of the council tax costs and the rents for the new properties and parking issues, that only a small number of residents wanted to take up Crinscott Street. So we focused on supporting residents to bid for existing homes, but also supporting them with a pre-advert process, knowing that new homes wasn't the panacea to this issue. So I hope that answers the question.
Can I just add to that, if I may, Chair, that I think the prime concern of residents is they want this to be over and done with as quickly as possible because it's been hanging around for so long. And the other thing, obviously, I forgot to mention is that, you know, potentially there's over 100 flats here that could be housing people off our housing waiting list, or, you know, whatever we intend to do eventually with the block. But, you know, there's people on that estate that are living in overcrowded conditions and they can see a block next door to them which is empty. So just to reiterate, it's the timelines that people locally are worried about, and you know, we need to set an end date for this so that everybody's perfectly clear what needs to happen between now and then, and ensure we get on with having new homes for people to live in. And of course, I'd also like to thank Councillor Dennis for attending the TNRA meetings along with local ward councillors, and that's helped inform the discussions. And indeed, Councillor Dennis came on a walkabout on the estate earlier in the year, and that was appreciated by all the local residents.
Thank you. Sarah and Safraz, on the two fundamentals that have come out of all of that discussion. So one is us being clear about what is the point at which everyone will have been able to move out into a home that's right for them. And the second on, there are clearly a set of lessons to learn from this process of how these things could be done with more pace. And it sounds like, for example, making sure that when we're offering accommodation, the full details of that accommodation is available straight away, so people can decide very early on, is the rent, is the business, is the council tax, is the parking restrictions suitable for them or not, rather than having a delay about those kinds of bits of the process. So on the second, are we clear that we have now learnt all of those lessons and that we are clear about how we'd need to do this in any similar circumstances in the future? There's obviously detail in the report on that, but I just want to make reassurance that we really have. And on the second one, when will we be able to have a clear timeline for for everyone to have been able to move out?
Thank you. First and foremost, I want to say thank you to Councillor Wingfield for really bringing to life what the challenges are here and making it very clear around the importance of timelines and end date. And actually bring to life how residents feel and how they want the closure on it and to be moved. I think your points also about the impact on the housing revenue account is a very important one, and we were obviously discussing it over review and scrutiny on Monday, and we'll be doing so again shortly. I think from my perspective, and Southwark will obviously come in to give some more detail at this point, I think the learning about what we need to do has been done. The priority is implementing that learning across the council, and I'm conscious that it cross-cuts different areas of the council. And actually, I was hopeful that obviously there is a drafting process of a report that we would be further ahead by the time we got to the Cabinet meeting. And as Alfred set out, there has been one buyback, but there haven't been any additional moves. And I think the thing for me and the priority for me is making sure the moving parts of the council is actually delivering on the recommendations that are in here and what's been put forward in terms of what that one council approach is.
In terms of implementing the learning, I think with support from other colleagues and looking at some of the individual households which are remaining, I think the remaining households could be reduced to 50% very, very quickly with a lot of support. There are some cases there and some households where there's routes for those residents to be rehoused, both by the council but also by working with other partners as well, for example. So in terms of a timeline, I can't give a definite timeline today, but I will be updating Councillor King and colleagues before the end of March, and I will be looking at devising individual strategies for the remaining households. There are some complex cases there with one or two residents in terms of the level of support they need and the vulnerabilities, so those cases are slightly more complex, and as you get down to the fewer numbers, those are the more difficult cases to, I guess, to rehouse. We do personal rehousing plans with all residents, and we have a weekly surgery now as well. So in terms of providing full information to residents about rents, council tax, other options, there are ongoing discussions on a weekly basis, and the ratio of residents to RSOs is small given the numbers we've got now. When I initially started, we had one RSO working with 24 residents. We reduced that ratio down to one RSO per 8 or 6 residents, basically. So we're providing a lot more in-depth support.
Thank you much, RSO as Resident Support Officer. Is that right? Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for that. I think we are still seeking, as quickly as we can, that reassurance on the timescale. I appreciate you can't give a precise answer today, and I wouldn't want you to make one up. But if we could have that come back as quickly as possible, and of course we've got a report back in July, and I would hope that by then we will be able to set a firm timetable, and I see lots of nodding on that. I think I'm going to look not just to officers presenting, but also the Chief Executive to ensure that the support across the whole Council is available to deliver that support to find the right home for every resident in the block as quickly as we possibly can. Thank you. Any other questions or comments people wanted to make at this point? No. In that case, can I thank Councillor Wingfield and all of the ward councillors for the support you're providing to residents, and I thank officers as well. And can I take us on to the recommendations in the report? So there are 5 recommendations there on page 19. Can we agree those 5 recommendations?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much. So the next item we have on the agenda is the closure of Anne Burnett Nursery School, and I'm going to hand over to Councillor Ali to introduce that one.
Hi. Thank you, Leader. Today I'm joined with our Director of Children's Services, Alistair, and also Georgia Pritchard, one of our early years advisors. We were meant to be joined by the head teacher of Anne Bernard. Unfortunately, Gregory Dowie, unfortunately, he got the call this morning that Ofsted are in. Okay, so moving on to the report then, it's on the supplemental agenda number 1. Well, I feel very sad. The fact is, the dramatic fall in the birth rate and over 30% fewer children being born just here in Southwark, and the trends of families leaving London continues to take its toll on our primary schools, as we know. And then today, we have to approve the closure of our much-loved nursery school, Anne Bernard. Anne Bernard is one of 5 maintained nursery schools in the borough, and Gregory Dowie, who I've mentioned, and the governing body have taken many steps to address the financial issues that in order to be more sustainable. And they've actually brought together a federation which consists of a number of schools and more than one nursery, Nelgwyn as well. But the number of children attending this nursery has fallen by nearly 50% since 2016. And the school leadership report that the nursery is no longer financially viable. And this has been actioned by the council, and after extensive consultation, which is now complete, we saw that the financial position for Anne Bernard was just not sustainable, and it increased from 100k deficit in 21-23 to 300k in 22-23. So, following our 200 million investment in schools, we're working, obviously everybody will know that we're working very closely with schools to try and weather this storm, this demographic storm. We've worked with schools on keeping education strong. And as lead member, I want to remind people and assure them that, I've been leading in London on this issue, and I recently wrote to Education Secretary Gillian Keegan to bring her attention precisely to the crisis going from the primary to the nursery provision, and I pointed out that her own nursery expansion programme would be in jeopardy if she did not support Anne Bernard and other nurseries. I heard nothing. So, at least the River Peck have another nursery, Nelgwyn, which can help with places for families. And my team are working closely with Gregory to hold all our families through this. And I want to personally thank Gregory, but obviously I want to thank Georgia as well for all the work that you have done on this. In the meantime, so thank you for holding all our families, but in the meantime, we must continue with our strategic approach, and we will continue to press government on these issues. And we wanted Gregory to come because, you know, he's much more eloquent than me, but he actually, you know, understands how important it is to have, you know, our nursery provision, which, you know, there are many nursery provisions, but our nursery provision are there for children, you know, from disadvantaged backgrounds. And, you know, we absolutely have to fight tooth and nail to defend this provision. It's with heavy heart that I ask you to recommend, well, I recommend that you agree the recommendation for closure of this nursery. Thank you.
Thank you. Alistair, would you like to add anything?
Just very little. To firstly just say, I think Gregory would really confirm he would want to be here, and he has appreciated the interest. I know Councillor Ali, you've had a lot of dialogue with him, and officers have worked very closely. Georgia has, and I visited him, so I wanted to acknowledge that. He would appreciate the support that he's been given, and he would share that it's been difficult and with sadness that he's making that, you know, asking us. It's initiated by the school. Just a couple of things to add. On page 20, there's a map that shows other proximity of other nursery provisions, so I think it's important to know that. And the overall pupil numbers there at the moment is about I think just under 40. It says 42 on page 26 of the report. I think it's reduced slightly. Half of those pupils will move to primary schools, so it only affects roughly about 20 pupils. Every child is an individual. We have a individualised approach to support them and give them the information that they need to attend other nurseries. Happy to answer any more questions. George is an expert in the field and for many, many years, and happy to answer anything else that would be helpful for Cabinet.
I think the most important question first to ask is for those 20 children that would need to move, could you just talk us through the availability of places locally for them to move to?
Yes, there are plenty of available places in a whole range of provision, and we will be working with the school to identify and support those parents to find settings that are convenient and local to them. So, for example, there is now Gwyn, which is a maintained nursery school. There's also the Grove up the road from them as well. So there are plenty of places. Our concern also lies with those children who have additional needs and ensuring that they are able to access their places. So there'll be additional support for those parents to ensure that that transition is as smooth as possible.
And could you say a little bit more to us about what that additional support will mean in practice for those families who do have additional support needs, children who do?
Yes, so the support will be that the school will be working very closely with them, but we also have what we call the SENDIF fund, which is a pot of money that we use to support children with additional needs, and we'll be using that to ensure that these children are well supported in any provision that they go to, so any new setting can put resources or staffing in place to ensure that those children are well catered for when they get to their new provision. So that's a way of supporting the children, but also the new setting as well. So that's been agreed with our Assistant Director for SEND, so that's something that we'll be putting into place, and I'll be working with the school following today's outcome to ensure that that's in place for those parents.
Are there any other questions that members of Cabinet would like to ask? I have a couple more if others don't. So, I mean, what the most striking change that sits behind all of this, which is in paragraph 5, is that in Peckham itself, there's been, although Peckham and Nunhead area, there's been a 35% reduction in the birth rate. And obviously, that of course flows through into a need for less nursery places. Could you give us our latest understanding of what we think has caused such a large drop of over a third in the number of children being born in that area?
I can't claim for expertise on this, but there's been lots of conversations around that, a mixture, a number of factors. I think it's about some families have left the borough. I think it's about availability of housing, affordability as well. I think of having smaller families as well. I think that's part of it. George, whether you want to add anything from your understanding?
I don't think it is basically the change in demographic, I think, and we aren't seeing as many families in the borough as previously for a number of reasons. So that is a picture that's continuing for us, and it will continue for a while to come.
Jasmine.
Shall I come in at the end? Are there any more questions?
Are there any more questions that people would like to... Helen?
Okay.
I suppose in that context, obviously there's a lot about childcare in the news at the moment, particularly with the 3 hours entitlements that are coming in, and our role as a local authority to ensure sufficiency in places, although obviously our powers and resources are limited. So I suppose it's just wanting to be assured that, and maybe this is a bigger question because it's not just about Anne Bernard's, but that we have plans in place with the 3 hour entitlements coming forward to ensure that there are enough places in Peckham and Nunhead, but also beyond, that parents can access and use their 3 hours. Thanks.
So we've updated our sufficiency assessment, so absolutely we have those places. I think that one of the issues with that change, it's about enabling parents to go into work, and we have wider interest to make sure that the needs of children are well met, particularly those with additional needs. So we have that in mind very much when we're looking at this, and very conscious of those other maintained nursery settings, and really wanting to take the opportunity of focus on this area to make sure we've got that support right. So just one example, Georgia mentioned the Send It Fund. We've worked with our schools to double the size of that fund. And what that means is a pot of money, recognising that children when they're very young will not have had an EHC plan, because you need to be in the school setting for a while and understand and assess need and look at help. But it's the pot of money before then that allows those settings to get help in earlier. And we didn't have enough there. We more than doubled that really. So I think it's just wanting to underline to you, Councillor Dennis, that it's sufficient places, but it's the right places to meet the right needs that we're very much conscious that we need to develop.
Thank you. And my last question was just on the building itself. We have a plan agreed for the maintaining educational buildings. I just wondered if there's anything else you could say about what would likely happen with this building and what the process for that would be. And secondly, of course, this building was named after Anne based on her contribution to the borough. And if we had given thought to finding another suitable building to carry on that legacy of her, and if not yet, if we please could.
I'll take the second question first. We have been in contact with the family, and they're very supportive, their understanding of our decision, and we do have that in mind, definitely, how we'll continue that to honour that name. Firstly, around use of the building, every building that is a school, was a school, needs to continue for an educational purpose. The Secretary of State retains control over decision making around that, but it's a public asset, so it's something that we would, if we want to change the use, the Secretary of State might agree that, but we need to think about it as public utility. There's no decision on Anne Bernard yet. There's lots of consideration around that. Might it be used for SEND, for children with additional needs? But you can't do that in isolation. You need to do that in context with all the provision for that in the borough. And we are taking stock of that, so we're making the right investment that benefits children the most, that maximises the use of our funding for that. In terms of all of these assets, these schools, I want to say to the Cabinet that I am very mindful as the Director of Children's Services with responsibility for education. These are public assets. I get approached quite a lot. Could we use this building? Could we use that building? There needs to be a fair and visible and transparent process around that. So I chair a capital board that goes through that, but that doesn't decision make. Decision makes what it should appropriately, but some decisions would need to go up and beyond that. So there's wider consideration of that, and it absolutely must be for educational purpose or wider community benefit, health or otherwise, and we have that very much in mind.
Thank you. Jasmine, would you like to make any final comments?
Just three final comments, if I may, and that is on the causes. Well, look, I just want to remind everyone that they are well documented in the Keeping Education Strong strategy, page 4, and really nothing more to add. It started with, one could argue it started with Brexit, and then, basically the pandemic exacerbated, this issue of families. And it made it worse because families realised, actually one can live anywhere and still hold a job, in London. But then, the birth rate, it's dropping, it's increased, even in the time, decreased rather, even in the time that I wrote this, we wrote this strategy. So all of those. But the one thing to add, and that is, basically at the forefront of Sarah and Helen's mind, thank goodness, is this issue of house prices. And we've called it out in the strategy. The rental gone up in all over London, but in Southwark even more, and also, the housing costs to buy too. So I think, basically, we cannot build these, more affordable houses quick enough. And thank goodness we have a strategy for that. The second point, Helen, on the point of the expansion, I'm not contradicting anything the officers are saying, of course, but this is why I wrote to Gillian Keegan. And my counterparts, absolutely apoplectic is no exaggeration, because they're in the same position. They're seeing nurseries close. Meanwhile, we've got this government are telling everyone that they'll expand. Then it just doesn't add up and it doesn't make sense. And the final thing, do forgive me, Leader, I forgot to mention that the ward councillors, Chloe, Sabina and Barry, they have been heavily engaged in this process, and I forgot to thank them as well. They told me to do all I could to keep the nursery going, and they were basically all over the consultation, and they also extend their thanks to basically our staff team as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all of the work that's gone on here to explore all of the options before we reach this one. And I think it is always a sad thing to close such an important institution, but the reasons are compelling that you've set out for why it's the right thing to protect other nurseries in the area and deliver the best start in life for the children who need nursery provision in the local community. Having had all of that discussion, can we therefore agree that the single recommendation here, which is to agree to close the nursery? Agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming today. And we wish Gregory the very best of luck with the Ofsted, which I'm sure we look forward to good news on. I'm going to take us on to the next paper on the agenda, which is item 10, which is the draft homelessness and rough sleeping strategy. Helen, would you like to introduce that one?
Yeah, thank you very much. We continue to be in the middle of a homelessness crisis, and the figures that we've seen even just over the last week underline the point that this continues to escalate, with more people rough sleeping, 27% annual increase reported in the last week, and also more children homeless, up 40% in the last year. So the trends, unfortunately, we're getting all too used to seeing these increases reported at every point, and I think we are well aware of the poor outcomes that stem from homelessness, and particularly for children. But there are a huge number of challenges in this area at the moment. So an increase in homelessness, which is being fuelled by the cost of living crisis, the increase in no-fault evictions, the insufficient local housing allowance challenges that we've seen here in Southwark around Home Office cases, and then at the same time, the lack of affordable supply. So people really struggling to find properties in the private rented sector, social rent homes not being built at the scale across the country that they need to be, although we are bucking the trend somewhat in Southwark, but we need to do more. So there's I suppose it's just to say this is a statutory thing that we have to bring forward, and we're bringing this forward for consultation, the draft strategy, but it's also incredibly timely because we need to be playing our part and stepping up to the plate in Southwark to respond to the housing and homelessness crisis. So the draft strategy, which is being published here for consultation, sets out our overarching goal to work to end homelessness through the delivery of timely, effective and collaborative support, which enables Southwark residents to address their housing insecurity. So it's deliberately focused on the importance of partnership and the importance of early intervention. And I want to thank all the members of the Homelessness Forum that have already contributed to this, and to the partners who also came to the scrutiny session and gave evidence. The strategy is underpinned by a few objectives. Firstly, we really want to be data-led. We want to be understanding what's happening in our borough and responding to that. And to that end, this is informed by a really comprehensive data review. So there's a lot of papers attached to this, and you'll see a huge amount of information there, which really tries to get under the skin of what is happening in Southwark specifically. We also want to ensure that our advice and support is effective and timely. That's really important for our residents, and we want to be outcomes focused, so always learning, always open to improving the quality of our support. The strategy sets out 5 proposed priorities. So firstly, to prioritise homelessness prevention. Secondly, deliver high quality advice and support. Thirdly, to work to end rough sleeping. Fourthly, to achieve quality outcomes through our housing provision. And fifthly, to tackle systemic housing insecurity. And you'll see in the papers that these priorities are all supported by an action plan, which we will continue to work through with our partners in the Homelessness Forum, and also through a recurring roundtable, which is going to be a kind of revived process, if you like, that I will chair myself as the lead cabinet member. There's a huge amount of activity set out in the action plan around strengthening the referrals process, around a new prevention forum, looking at how we can explore co-location of services for early advice in the community, expand the Housing First team as an ambition. So a lot of these are obviously dependent on us trying to kind of seek additional funding, but it really sets out kind of where we think we can improve the service. I suppose the other thing to add from my perspective, I'm really keen to ensure that we're strengthening ways in which service users can provide further feedback and insights to the council. So we've got the Homelessness Forum where we've got lots of our kind of partners coming together, but we really want to ensure that we are learning from people who are accessing and using our service so that we can really strengthen it. And I suppose just one of the final things to say is also that this isn't just about housing solutions. It is a really real kind of cross-council effort. So obviously it does draw and links to all the work that we're doing in the kind of new council house building programme, because our commitment to deliver more social rent properties is fundamentally linked to a strategy about homelessness reduction and ensuring there are sufficient places that people can afford in the borough. It also links to the work the Exchequer team do to administer discretionary housing payments to help people sustain their tenancies, the advice and support that is offered, the work to adults and children's as well, who commission our specialist services, support for care leavers. So it's just underlines like it's a really big kind of cross-council effort. With that, I'll hand over to Jerome, and Cheryl might want to say a few words. A big thank you to Jerome and Karen, who's not here today, and to Cheryl for the team for pulling this together, because it's an enormous piece of work, as you've probably seen from the kind of scale of the papers. The recommendations are set out there to essentially publish this for draft consultation. The one thing, and I didn't warn Cheryl I was going to say this, the one thing I would be quite keen to do as just a slight amendment to the papers is for my forward, which is set out in the Cabinet report, also to be pulled over into the draft strategy document so that it can set the strategy in context when it goes out for consultation. But with that, that's probably enough from me. So I don't know if you want to say anything to add to that, Cheryl.
Thank you very much. There's not really much to add onto that one, Councillor. What I would say is this does build on the excellent work that we've been doing with partners, as you've outlined. So it builds on that, takes us forward. You can see I'm probably just going to duplicate what Councillor Dennis has just said. An enormous amount of information here. There's a lot of analysis around this. The partners with whom we work are very dedicated. We see ourselves shoulder to shoulder with our partners. It is a whole council, it's also a whole borough issue. And we will work really hard over this next period with the consultation, and of course we'll be bringing that back for formal adoption when we take account of any feedback that we get from our partners. I think I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much. I mean, the situation for homelessness in London has been heartbreaking for a long time, but as reaches new levels of crisis by the day, it feels like. I know the figures were published by all of London councils last year to say that 1 in 23 children in our city are now in temporary accommodation. The figures will be higher than that by now, as we know, more than 1 in every classroom. And this is an area where it feels like the government have completely derelicted their responsibilities. If I speak as just to 2 elements of that, on rough sleeping during the pandemic, we all but ended rough sleeping, all but. That was a pledge that the government made in their last manifesto that would happen. Since the pandemic, national support to do that has completely evaporated, and councils have been left on their own to do what we can. And we are doing a huge amount with our outreach service, with our addiction teams, outreach addiction teams, providing accommodation, working with the voluntary sector and others to provide that supported accommodation that people can move on to, bringing our hostels in-house. But without the government backing us, no council can go it alone on such a fundamental issue. And likewise, yesterday I was in Parliament for the launch of our Bakerloo report, and business in the chamber had stopped. Nothing was being debated because the government was bringing nothing forwards when they have a renters reform bill that could have been being debated and going through Parliament that afternoon. A bill that would end no-fault evictions if it was introduced. Another pledge they made at the last election that now looks set not to be get through during the term of this Parliament, and even if it does, to have a clause in there that means it won't be introduced for years in any case. It is a sad state of affairs. However, in Southwark, thank you, Helen. Thank you to all of you and to all of our partners in the, what's the forum called again, Helen? In the Homelessness Forum for the fantastic collaboration that I know that's going on with NHS and other public service and voluntary sector partners on this. Some fantastic work. Are there any other questions? Jasmine, yes, and Martin.
Yes, I wanted to thank Helen and Cheryl and team for all the work on this. It is a really good example of cross-council working, and I'm absolutely relieved and delighted to see prevention, care leavers, and children in this. I also wanted to thank you for all the work that you've done, with the refugee crisis. We're looking at 1,200 people just finding themselves homeless because the government haven't prepared for refugee integration. So, I've got no complaints. I think your team have really, helped my team, risen to the challenge to try and catch people as they fall into homelessness. But just on that point, really, I just wondered if I could seek your assurances that, refugee integration would remain, a part of, at the forefront of your minds when you have your roundtables and, your further iterations on this work.
Yes, absolutely, Councillor Ali. Thanks for highlighting that issue. It's been really important, and the work that the voluntary sector has done to kind of pull together the fortnightly kind of support meetings for refugees so they can access information and support all in one place, including homelessness advice. It's been really important. Just to reassure you, in the strategy and in the action plan, under the rough sleeping section, I think it's kind of 24, 25, 26 in terms of the kind of action points. There's a whole load of points there about how we want to try and work together better with the Home Office through the duty to refer process, trying to get them to share early information so that we can provide earlier support, and working with the voluntary and community sector to do that, and reiterating the call that the Home Office provide 56 days notice before residents are asked to leave hotel accommodation. So there is quite a lot in there.
There's nothing further to add. That support is there, Councillor, and will remain there as long as it's needed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So in that case, can we go on and agree the recommendations in here? There were 3 recommendations. Oh, sorry, Martin, a very quick question.
I'll try to make my question quick. Your first priority, based upon the evidence that's been presented so far, which says using data-led to join up approach to prevent homelessness and sustain existing accommodation arrangements where possible, this is primarily with your public sector partners. Is the private sector involved? Because that's where I understand much of the homelessness is being generated from. The hyperinflation in private sector rentals is what's causing the problem for the public sector. So are they part of your partnership?
Thank you for that question. And yes, absolutely they are. We do run landlord forums. We're working with landlord bodies as well. It is a very difficult situation with rising rents in the private rented sector. But we do want to bolster support for those renting privately. So that's through partnerships with landlord groups, agents as well, and also making sure that we've got a more robust enforcement umbrella within the council as well, because we often see poor practice in the private rented sector. So that is all, yes, very much part of our prevention agenda.
If I can just add to that, it's critically important because from a strategic perspective, they are a key player in the provision of housing. There isn't enough social housing, we know that, it's well documented. We're doing really well building all of our new properties, but across Southwark, London and the rest of the country, available accommodation is getting scarcer. We hear, don't we, routinely stories of maybe they're not even advertising private rented properties now, and there's 25 viewings maybe, and they're snapped up like that. So it is absolutely critical because they do provide that important infrastructure for the people that we're trying to help via these strategies.
Thank you. Good to have that reassurance that work is happening. In that case, can we then agree the recommendations? There are 3 recommendations there on page 22, which is first and foremost to go out to consultation on the strategy, which will be coming then back to us later in the year for agreement. Agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. So I take us next on to another paper that Helen will introduce again in a moment, which is on the Strategic Community Infrastructure Levy funding. Helen, over to you.
Sets out our plans for making decisions around the use of strategic community infrastructure levy going forward. We collect community infrastructure levy from development in the borough, and 70% of that goes towards strategic projects. To date, that has all been invested in the Elephant and Castle tube upgrade, and indeed some of us are going to what they call the bottoming out ceremony of the box at the station just this week. So fantastic progress being made there, and we've invested through this route over £70 million as a council to making that happen and really improving the transport infrastructure there for residents, and also making it ready for the Bakerloo line extension, which we very much hope will happen over the coming years. So we've reached the point now where we are still accruing money through strategic SIL. We need to make decisions about future allocations. So the paper sets out a proposal that 50% of our strategic SIL payments going forward will still be set aside for the Bakerloo line extension. So that sets money aside, including in this paper £250,000 for station design work, to really demonstrate that Southwark is playing our part. We're really committed to the Bakerloo line extension. We believe it is the next big infrastructure project for London and will be absolutely transformative for our residents in terms of homes and jobs and growth that it can provide. So we're absolutely committed to that and playing our part. The remaining 50% of strategic SIL payments going forward will be prioritised for strategic transport projects such as, but not exclusive, Peckham Rye Station and also the Elephant and Castle Overground Station. And also just to add that this paper also proposes £350,000 being allocated towards the Elephant and Castle Overground Station for the work towards making that station fully accessible. There is also a proposal that we could use the strategic SIL money going forward for match funding of investment by bodies such as TfL in active travel routes. So that would be things like strategic cycle routes in the borough. And also any additional infrastructure identified in the council delivery plan that meets the legal definition of infrastructure and benefits the community. So that could include really kind of key borough-wide community facilities, for example. So this is, I think, really exciting. It demonstrates that we are wanting to invest and continue investing in really big kind of infrastructure projects going forward and really making the most of the money that is being generated through development for our residents.
Thank you, Mark. Something you'd like to add?
Nothing to add, Chair.
James.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dennis and Neil, for this paper. And I just want to really be specifically grateful and thankful for the point on paragraph 12 about how the recognition in this paper that our active travel routes are also part of our strategic transport network. Clearly, public transport is so important for many people in the borough, well, for most of us in fact, but walking, cycling, scooting and wheeling are as well. And this is completely in line with our Streets for People policy and approach, where we want active travel to be the quickest, easiest, safest, most convenient way to travel wherever possible. So it's really great to see that that approach is being reflected across all the council's work, across all the different teams. I think it's a really exciting step change. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Absolutely. James, you and I this morning were at a celebration of the extension of Cycle Superhighway number 4. Fantastic to see families on their bikes on segregated cycle route going into school of a morning. But also some amazing statistics that the Cycling Commissioner Will Norman was quoting to us, that in London we've quadrupled the amount of safe cycling routes across the city over recent years. And that the number of people cycling in London is now equivalent to a third of all tube journeys or a quarter of all bus journeys. It's a mode of transport that has genuinely gone mainstream, and it is no longer just people in Lycra cycling. It is people on their way to school with their kids, younger and older. And it's so our strategic infrastructure and projects like Cycle Superhighway number 4 is a fantastic thing for us to think about for the future, as well as the Bakerloo line at the other end of the spectrum. And again, we were at, a number of us, well, sorry, Helen, you and I were at the launch of that at Parliament yesterday. A fantastic reception from people across London, not just Southwark and Lewisham, but across London for the difference that would make. And the over 107,000 homes it would support, and the over 150,000 jobs it would support across our city and indeed beyond in the rest of the country. The lead from the Siemens factory, where the current Piccadilly line trains, was at the event, talking about how vital it is for there to be jobs for the 700 people who work in that factory once they've finished making those trains, to go on to make the Bakerloo line trains as well. So really important investment in here in our infrastructure as well as community infrastructure too. I see no other questions on this one, so very briefly, Martin. Yes, go on.
I'll endeavour to keep my question brief. I want to address the issue of payment in lieu. This is one of those issues which has been percolating for some time. It was last updated in 2015, and I respect the fact that it's been updated in this paper. So.
I think it's this for the SPD.
Oh, I'm in the wrong paper.
Yes. Okay. We'll come back to it. Okay, thank you very much. So in that case, can we agree the recommendations on this paper, on the Community Infrastructure Levy? There are 3 recommendations there. Can we agree those? Agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. I'm going to take us on to the Digital and Technology Strategy. Steph.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this report is setting out our draft digital and technology strategy to run up until 2026. I think it's a really important strategy. We know that digital and technology emerges and changes at rapid pace, and we need to have a strategy that absolutely keeps up with that and absolutely make sure that it is easier for our residents to interact with us as a council as well. So we've looked at the strategy and where we need to be for the next 3 years around this, and we have 5 main pillars around this, or priorities that we want to set out. So the first one is around smart neighbourhoods. It's making sure that we are one of the best connected boroughs in London. We do have a council delivery plan commitment to make sure that we are as digital as possible for those who want to be digital around that, and looking at how technology can be used to empower our residents to become more digital first around that. So we'll be working very closely with Lottie, so that's the London Office of Technology and Information, to look at how we can embed that as we go along. The next one, which is really important, they're all really important, but it's about having a people-powered digital experience. That's making sure that the user experience for people who want to be digital is the best experience they can have. I think it's fair to say that a lot of people would like to interact with the council and services in a digital way, but the structures we have in place do not enable that at the moment. It then means that those people who are not able to access digital services have a better experience accessing non-digital services as well, so we can have a better digital service at the front end for those of us who can as well, and having a single front door and sign on where possible. So if you want to arrange, for example, bulky waste collection, or you want to check and pay your council tax, you don't have to go onto different sign-ins. There's just that one single front door experience around that. And then there's about closing the gap and digital exclusion. I think we've done a lot in that field over the years. We've really worked hard on digital inclusion, whether it be through the local economy team or through the digital team and through our Wayleaf partnerships with Hyperoptic and Community Fibre. But it's really important that we allow those residents, we are still providing residents the tools and skills and technology they need, and that was really, really dependent on also having fast, reliable internet across the borough as well. We've always had that commitment to ensure that there is a digital hub available for those who need it, who are unable to provide their own internet as well. And then it's really then about the council and how the council runs, and actually digital sits at the heart of the council and how it's run around that. I think we have to be really receptive to the fact that not everybody who works for the council is digitally included as well, and it's about bringing those strands together, making sure that everybody has the tools they need and the training they need to be able to deliver the essentials, and actually having a workforce that is meeting the evolving needs of our residents whilst adapting new ways of working, feeling empowered to do that. And then the final pillar around this is being data enabled. We have a lot of data that we hold, but I don't think we always use it in the best way to actually sort of deliver and design services and policies and strategies that benefit our residents. So it's about how we use that data in a more smart way, a more informed way, how we can look at emerging technologies like AI to use that, but in a very safe way. I want to, we do have to have parameters around how these are used as well. So this is really sort of the 5 pillars within the strategy. There's quite a lot within that sits under all of those, but I know that we've had real robust discussions around this. So I feel that this is a policy and a draft strategy that we can absolutely deliver what we need to do to be a well-run council, to be a digitally enabled and digital-first council, whilst ensuring that those people who are not able to access digital have the services and support that they need at the same time.
Anything you'd like to add, Clive? Or no? Any questions on this one? Lots of work that's gone into this.
I was going to say yes, and also thank you to Matthew and Dion and the team, because this has been a massive piece of work to pull together. It's not easy to get a digital strategy together. It really isn't. And yeah, thank you.
Evelyn.
Yes, I just want to say a huge thank you to the work you've done on here. I went to the Disability Forum last week, and one of the topics was about digitally being excluded by a lot of our disabled and older residents. They mentioned our website and other things. So can you just elaborate on what you're doing to help these communities get more connected?
Oh, Jeff, see, techie doesn't know how to use it. It's
very old-fashioned technology.
Yeah, it's true. So what we're doing is rewriting the website on a new platform. So the content's being rewritten to be more accessible, screen reader accessible too, so that it can read and go through all the different elements. So that's what we're currently undertaking for this year, so that'll be going live. And internally, we're also rewriting the intranet, so externally and internally, it will do the same thing, be more accessible, photos will be more accessible, contrasts will be more accessible, so that then people can access the information in a better way. We're also looking at workflow to make it easier for people to use, so that we can do that, and we are plugged into different groups to do that testing, so we're doing user testing as we go along, so it is an easier way to access our services. Okay.
Thank you. And I didn't ask you to introduce yourself, so do introduce for me, so people who are watching know.
Yeah, it's Matthew Grattan. I'm the head of technology transformation.
Thank you, Matthew. Catherine.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a plea or an offer, really, in relation to using our libraries and our leisure centres as part of the consultative piece around this and service development going forward. The library service captures a lot of data and information about digital usage, and there's a lot of information in our annual reports on libraries that shows the move, not only loans but engagement with digital products and services. So I'd very much hope that that insight, knowledge and that facility is at the heart of the engagement piece, and also reaching those groups that will cross the threshold of a library but can't log on, and how you bridge that gap in terms of their Southwark accounts, and using an improved website to be able to access and facilitate fully in council services, and be able to speak to a human being in the library to help them on that journey. So just to make sure that that's recognised, and that, you know, whole council approach is taken up.
Yep. I see nodding to that one. Okay, great. In that case, can we agree the recommendations in this report? Where are we at? Here we are. Yep. So we've got 4 recommendations there. Sorry, wrong one. 2 recommendations. Yeah, that's the next one I'm talking about. 2 recommendations there. Are we happy to agree those? Yep. Agreed. Thank you very much. Oh, sorry, yes, indeed. Yes, so can you, I'll take that back. So can Cabinet agree the first recommendation, which is that the draft refresh technology and digital strategy as attached be agreed? Agreed?
Agreed.
And I will agree the second one, which is that the leader of the Council delegates authority to the Cabinet Member for Communities and Democracy and Finance to agree to the final strategy and publish it in April 2024, which I agree. Going on to item 13, and back to you, Steph. This one is the procurement strategy approval for temporary accommodation.
Back to me.
In my notes it says Steph. But,
afraid it's me again, sorry. We've already touched on all of the challenges around temporary accommodation. So this work that we've been doing to look at more effective procurement really supports the kind of overall approach to ensure that we're procuring accommodation that meets our good home standards, but also that we're doing it as effectively as possible. And at the moment we've been relying on spot purchasing, which is a really time-consuming way of doing it. So what the proposal is here is to bring forward a dynamic purchasing system that will enable us to kind of better plan in the procurement of temporary accommodation. The issue around quality is absolutely front and centre, as well as value for money. We don't pretend this is going to necessarily make it any easier, because the challenges remain whether you're spot purchasing or bringing forward a kind of procurement framework. The scarcity of affordable accommodation still kind of runs through this really evidently. So the challenges will remain across London, but for the team this will be a more efficient way of managing the amount that we need to procure. And it obviously does go alongside, the numbers are in here. I think we're over 3,800 households in temporary accommodation, so the numbers have been going up and up. We do remain in a slightly more positive position than some other local authorities, because we are still able to use some of our estate regeneration properties. It's about 1,200 households that are still in our own kind of council house stock, and we are looking across the board at kind of other ways in which we can make best use of our stock, and looking at the possibility of acquisitions, which other councils have been doing as well in the current context. But this is really important for the team to bring forward at this time. One other note. There is a slight amendment to paragraphs 30 and 33. Ricky might want to just clarify the dates on this, because I think there was an older version that made reference to publishing the prior information notice in February, so that will need to be amended to a new date in March.
Anything you would like to add? And do introduce yourself as well.
I'm Ricky Bellot. I'm the Programme Manager in Housing Solutions. So just in terms of the dates on there, it's prone to slippage, but it's not that it's vital for us to be able to introduce this. We just make adjustments to the date, so that's normal practice for that. Just in terms of this, we spoke about the temporary accommodation providers. This will help us to manage those providers as well and hold them to account to the actual agreements that they've put in place. So we want to make sure that those providers are providing us with the accommodation, making sure the gas and safety certificates are all in place and all in place in a timely manner. So we'll be certainly using this as a vehicle to help us to manage that as well. That was the only addition that I wanted to add.
Thank you very much. Sounds like some very sensible proposals and good to see them do. Again, just for reassurance, there are obviously different types of temporary accommodation we use. There are those for families who are homeless, there are those who families in our and residents in our own rented homes who need to move out for emergency reasons. And there has been homes for families with a children's social care duty to them. This will cover all of the temporary accommodation that we're commissioning as a borough, will it?
Yes, the emphasis on this is homeless because that's the majority and the bulk of them. But within the report, we do mention that the team that actually procures the accommodation does that for the whole of the council. So they'll be using this DPS system for all different services across the council.
That's very good to hear, to ensure we can get that quality of all homes and meet our standards that we've set. I see no questions on this one, so can we agree the recommendations on this report? Agreed. Thank you very much. And thank you for the work on it. Take us on to item 14, which is the contract award for integrated sexual health and reproductive services. Evelyn.
Thank you. So this is our gateway to paper seeking approval of an integrated sexual health and reproductive health service with King's College Hospital. And so apologies in advance. This is a report about sexual health, but it's not very sexy. But in true public health style, it's got all the details you need and very factual. So I want to first of all start off to say a huge thank you to King's College clinicians who were really instrumental in making sure we get to this point. It's important to say that there has been extensive engagement with service users and community to negotiate the contract we have now, and ultimately this will carry on going as we progress mobilization of the new service. And you may be wondering about successes, and we normally don't talk about successes in sexual health, but if you read paragraph 8, it talks about our great improvement in HIV, new HIV diagnosis. So just wanted to elaborate that so I just go back. So right now we have a huge number of people in Southwark that are living with HIV, and that continues, unfortunately. But new HIV diagnosis per 100,000 has decreased significantly from 82.5 per 100,000 in 2012 to now 25.5 per 100,000 in 2022, and that was the last reading. So, I mean, King's College involvement in providing PrEP and testing has really contributed to this. You also have been hearing a lot of, in the news about high STIs. And it's not a title we want, but I will say that this contract really helps to ensure that we continue providing access for our residents to go and test, and also for treatment as well. I just want to touch upon a little bit about this contract and what it provides. There's so much that it does, but I want to highlight Clinic Q, which is an inclusive trans sexual health service supporting the trans community. This is something we didn't have before, so I'm really great that we're able to forward this piece of work. This contract also talks about, and we are trying to work with King's to source and establish community support services where we can engage younger people and our residents to be able to come in and get testing and provide the support that they need. So really community sexual health provision that we're looking to embark on. So I think I will leave it there, but also to emphasize that there's so much more we're doing outside of this contract. There's a lot of community work and outreach work with young people, minoritized groups that is being done on top of this clinical contract. So anything else you want to add to it?
Nothing else to add, thank you.
It was a very thorough introduction. Okay, I see no hands on this one, so just thank you very much for the brilliant work on this. We know how important this is for our borough and our residents. So, and I know there's a huge amount of work behind it and more to do as well, but lots to get to this stage. So can we agree then the recommendations on this report? So we have 2 recommendations on page 153. Agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. And I shall take us on to the next report, item 15, which is on section 106, Community Infrastructure Levy Supplementary Planning Document. Helen, would you like to introduce?
Me again. Martin will get to have a go on this one as well. You'd be grateful. At one point there was something like 8 reports from me on this cabinet agenda. We've whittled it down somewhat. So this report is proposing that our drafts strategic Section 106 and Community Infrastructure Levy Supplementary Planning Document, SPD, goes out to consultation. So an SPD is planning guidance, which is there to support the delivery of the Southwark Plan, which is our planning policy for the borough. And what this SPD aims to do is to provide new viability tested figures for a lot of the in-lieu payments that are made for various things when developers come forward with proposals. And what we're trying to do through the viability testing, is to ensure that the amount that is being charged essentially covers the cost of delivery, or is essentially as high as it possibly could be through the viability testing process. So just a couple of things to highlight. One of the things that is going to be uprated quite significantly is the amount of money that is charged for playground provision. So that's a really positive thing. We will be able to deliver much better kind of playground improvements as a result of this SPD coming forward. Also, we have uprated the amounts that are expected for affordable housing in lieu payments. So on-site provision still remains our priority and our expectation of developers, but where sites are constrained and they might not be able to provide that, we have got expectations in terms of the amount per habitable room that they should be providing. And in the very north of the borough, where kind of land values are higher, etc., we are now expecting £250,000 per habitable room, and the figures are uprated for most of the borough to, and I'm going to forget the exact figure, it's over about 130,000, isn't it, from 100,000. So really ensuring that the amount that developers are bringing forward covers the cost of what we need to provide as a council, and also actually covers the cost of monitoring requirements as well. So we've invested quite a lot in things like affordable housing monitoring over the last few years, and we want to ensure that developers are paying their contribution towards that. So I think that's all I need to say. The only thing to note is that the consultation period, because of the London mayoral election, instead of going to consultation immediately, we are going to be waiting until after the mayoral election so that it doesn't get caught up in that process.
We're going to complete consultation on 13th of September.
Martin, you had a question on this one.
I did, and I'll keep it brief. My question is on the question of the seal payments. I'm going to appreciate the fact that it was updated in 2015, being updated as of today. I'm conscious that the housing market is quite volatile. 250,000 from the extreme north of the borough, I'm accepting as a reasonable figure. In the middle of the borough, which is of course Elephant Castle down to Peckham, we're seeing similar hyperinflation in cost of developments. I'm wondering if that figure is sufficient for the middle of the borough. I'm also wondering whether or not the period in which we review these seal payments is too long. Should it not be a shorter period of time, or there's a trigger to enable us to review quickly? Those are my two questions. Thank you.
I'm probably going to pass over to Juliet to respond to that in relation to the kind of viability assessment, and also the point about the length of time between reviews.
Yes, we've carried out an up-to-date viability assessment. The last ones that we did were in around 2020, but we didn't update the SPD at that time because we were at the examination in public, and so that's why. So we would do more up-to-date reviews, and so we are going to be doing another review quite soon anyway, looking at student housing and SIL and Section 106, so everything will be looked at, and we should get the results in 6 months' time. So we'll be looking at doing this more on an annual basis from now on moving forward.
And will the requirements be updated on that regular basis?
Yes,
the payment levels?
Yeah, if it shows that we need to make a change, we can make a change, yeah.
Okay, well, that's very good to hear. Steph?
Yeah, just a question. So under seal charging zones, there's a tiny little sliver of zone 3 in Rotherhithe Ward along Rotherhithe New Road and down to Weymouth Road around there. I'm just wondering why that zone 3, given all the regeneration that is happening in the area, why that little sliver is sort of executed away from the main part of Zone 3? And are there any plans to bring that into Zone 2, given the intensity of regeneration and build that is happening, and there is build happening in that little area as well?
Yes, so to change the sill zones, we have to go to an examination. So this was done for the last review that we, so this was done for the last review when we did the Old Kent Road review. So that's the work that we're doing now, looking at, we're doing a review, so we will include the zones as part of that, and we're looking at all the different rates and checking that they are at the right level. So yes, that's something we're looking into. So we're commissioned consultants to look at that at the moment to give us the viability information. So we are moving forward with that. I don't have an exact timetable, but that is, we're working on that right now.
Nothing moves as quickly as planning. And the labyrinthine processes we have to go through to get things signed off. I mean, very good to hear that we're moving the viability assessment bit, so we've got up-to-date numbers so we can ensure we're getting a fair contribution to our borough from development that's going on. I don't see any other questions, so we have just the one recommendation here. Can we agree that? Agreed. Thank you very much. And that is our final paper for today. We do have one thing to do in closed session, which is agree the minutes of our previous closed session. So we'll do that in a second once the cameras have been turned off. But thank you very much to everyone who's attended the open session today.